famous, number one, desirable. I do what I want, when I want, and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air, that's how I roll. I got tons of soul, I'm a true collectible. Famous, also famous, number one, desirable. I do what I want, when I want, and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air, that's how I roll. I got t-shirts, so I don't care about no gold. Better, so much better, flipping, incredible. Always on the show, so they know that I still got it. And I never feel sorry, yeah, top of the world. Top of the world. Yeah, top of the world. Top of the world. Yeah, top of the world.
Hey guys, I'm Si and welcome to Ace Podcast Nation, the home of our originally created series, My Story. This is Series 2, Episode number 10. And Ace Podcast Nation, of course, you're home to many great shows and series featuring top guests, expert analysts and more. And My Story, like all our other shows and series, available in video format at youtube.com/acepodcastnation. Please do subscribe, click the bell for notifications. Every time we got upload or go live, you'll get a little text. And of course, if you prefer your podcasts in audio form, then just search Ace Podcast Nation on your preferred platform. We are doing the show live this week as a special one-off. It's usually a pre-recorded show because I do something else on a Sunday, but I figured last Sunday we didn't release the show, so why not? But My Story is a unique series as we take our guests through their life and career from their birth and upbringing all the way to present day as they share stories and anecdotes along the way. Series 1 featured actors, footballers, broadcasters, authors and more, and Series 2 will be no different. The tagline is very simple: real conversations with real people. And my guest today is a very familiar face. He's Ex Boro, Cardiff City striker, as well as a host of other clubs. And of course he is the co-host of our football shows, the A.C.E footy show and the Championship show. And of course our upcoming Euros coverage to be announced later this week, I'd imagine. But it is Mr. Andy Campbell. Welcome, my friend. How are you?
Good evening. Very different. I don't know if I'm scared or nervous or both. A little bit in anticipation, but very different. Looking forward to it though. Really looking forward.
Well, the interesting thing about this one, mate, is you do most of the talking, and I kind of just listen, and then I'll throw in like the odd question. But it's not like when you did most of the talking the other week with Clark Carlisle, whereby you've got like two people bouncing. Like, I'm just listening, really. It's good fun. It's interesting because what I find is with all the different guests, and obviously we've had so many different people from different industries and different sports and music and all sorts, is as they're going through like different parts of their life, they remember stuff and they'll start telling a story and you go off on little tangents. But we keep it to an hour because we wanted to keep it nice and fresh and nice and quick, something different for the people. But it's been well received, I will say. Lots of people in the chat, the usual faces.
Looking forward to it.
I will say a little warning to the people in the chat so they don't get too frustrated. It's not going to be as interactive as like the Monday and the Friday shows and stuff like that. I will keep an eye on the comments and stuff like that, and if there's any questions which are relevant to what Andy's talking about, I'll throw them in. But generally it's going to be Mr. Campbell's story. And what we do, mate, to start is you take us right back to the start where it all began, so to speak, and tell us like a bit about you, your upbringing. We know you got a brother. Tell us about some of that in the early days, mate.
Oh, listen, I'm from a very hard-working area. My family, I'm very fortunate to be have the family I've got. Me and my brother weren't born with everything. We were brought up on a rough council estate, and my mum and dad worked really hard. My dad worked away whilst I was really young, and it was difficult. I'll be honest, you know, to not have your dad around for a long period of time, and Big Brother to be a role model as well. You know what I mean? Growing up and always looking after me and things. It was difficult. And then obviously, Dad got a really good job abroad, and was able to push us into a better area, so to speak, and life looked a little bit better for the family, for myself and my brother. Just give us more opportunities, you know what I mean? And when I see people from a lesser background and looking for that opportunity for the kids and for themselves, I'm all for, you know what I mean? People are very fortunate I got a chance because my mum and dad worked so hard, and my mum looked after me and my brother Neil for all our young life, and well, still to this day, to be honest. So it was great, and it's nice to always give something back, and just had it, and how hard they worked throughout their life to give us this opportunity that we've got.
Yeah, I think it's difficult, isn't it? It's like when you've got kids who are good at something, the parents, it's a lot of the kind of pushing them on. It comes from the parents, particularly in those early days, because the fact is, like, you've got a daughter who plays football now, I've got kids who play football. Is if, for instance, like if I don't run my kids to training and academy training and all these different things, they can't go. So you need your parents to be committed to getting you here, there, and everywhere, all across the country. Particularly, you know, if you're playing like a sort of representative level, where you have got to go a bit further than the local pitches. But like with you, was it always only ever football? Was there other sports? Was there other stuff that you were interested in as a kid in school?
I wouldn't say interested in. I'll say probably forced upon. We had to play rugby, or we weren't allowed to play football for the school team. And the school team at the time, you know, things what happened now with academies and other areas and other avenues. But school football at the time when I played and I was coming through, school football was a big thing. School football is what opened doors for other places, and school football was huge. It opened for me to play for the district, which I played for Langbar. Langbar, I don't think in North Yorkshire and things. So Langbar was Nunthorpe, through to Redcar, Saltburn, Broughton, all those kind of areas, and we had a very good side. You know what I mean? I know there's a few people on social media. Craig Haley was my strike partner. Robbie Stockdale, obviously Anthony Ormerod, ex-Middlesbrough player. So we had a very good side. You know, I'm not gonna lie and say we didn't. We did, but that included me as well. You know, and it was nice. But like you say, my opportunities would never come around because we were playing Sheffield, we were playing Doncaster, we were playing Middlesbrough, we were playing all over the place, Manchester, Greater Manchester. Mum and Dad, I wouldn't have been able to get there. I wouldn't have been able to get back. You know, it wasn't a case of there's transport. You know what I mean? It was Mum and Dad's desire to take me to push me into these places and make sure that everything was right for me. You know what I mean? Safe as well, because you know what I mean, they were always there before, but they weren't as well known about. You know what I mean? Back in the day, I'll say. You know what I mean? But it was great. You know what I mean? It was. I enjoyed rugby, to be honest, because I played on the wing. I didn't get stuck in. I didn't tackle. I was quick. So just give me the ball, I'd go and score a try, which was nice. But every 2 or 3 times in about 25 games in a season, it really hurt, and I didn't want to come back for more. You know, so every time I got tackled in a game, that was me done for the game. So if I got tackled in the first minute, just bring me off. But if I got through a full game, I'd be loving it because people would just get me the ball. It was quite fun.
So Rye asked a question just now, which is kind of reminiscent or to do with your early days in sport and football. He said, like, if you weren't a striker, was there any other positions that you would have played or could have played? Was it only ever striker? Were you a glory hound?
No, not growing up. No, you know, like, listen, it's quite cutthroat playing football. You know, like, especially watching junior football. Its parents want their son to get the ball, their son to score the goal. My mum and dad weren't like that. You know what I mean? If you believe it, we used to watch Neil on a Sunday. One of them used to watch me on a Sunday, and they wouldn't speak a word. The only conversation we would ever have would be on the Sunday dinner table about how we done or how badly we did. And I played up front sometimes. I played wide right, wide left. But it was just a variation, which I think helped me growing up and playing, because I always had that variation and confidence to play out wide. I was always good on my weaker foot. I was always good on my strong foot. You know what I mean? I knew different positions and different runs to make because I'd done it at a younger age, and I think that's so versatile. And I don't mean being versatile as in playing in 5, 6, 7 positions like a Phil Neville, for example. But I think it's good to be versatile, to show your talents off in at least 2, if not 3 positions.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I think, well, especially when you're a young kid, you learn more from playing different positions than you do if you just stick to one. And I think that's an important part of learning football. I think for me, that's what I tell my kids, particularly when they were a bit younger. I was just about to ask you about watching football, and Don has just said in the chat about watching Boro. How old were you when you went to watch your first live game of football in the stadium?
My first game, I think, was around '87. I watched a game at Essen Park against Newcastle United. It's the first game I remember. Middlesbrough had to win to stay up. Back then, you know what I mean, full of top stars. You know what I mean, the Peter Beasley of this world. Even the, you know what I mean, they had a really good side, and we beat them 4-1. Ian Baird scored 2. My hero Bernie Slaven scored 2 as well that day, and it was just amazing feeling to see the full. I remember turning to my dad and just saying, I want to play out there. That's my dream. My dream after that game was to play out in the stadium, because it was just everything about it. You know what I mean? Seeing all the red kits, the supporters, the atmosphere, how much fun everyone was having. You know what I mean? It might have been different. It might have turned me against football, but for that evening, that summer, it really got me going. And the next season, my dad got me a season ticket at the football club at Essen Park, and I just loved it. I just loved everything about it. I loved the build up. I loved waking up on the morning and watching TV and then looking forward to what time we were going. And then after the game, you'd listen to the results on the radio. Me and my dad would go and get a local paper called a Junior Sports Gazette, which had all the junior football results, which had sometimes write-ups from us, but also as well. So it was a day and a night, and it was just so special. And it just made football so special for me.
Yeah, it's once you get that bug, it's difficult to shake. You got to be honest. Once you start watching live football for the first time, like in terms of your schooling and stuff, when did football become the priority for you? How old do you reckon you'd have been? Because obviously, like as we've discussed, as is very well known, you're much older than me, and back in the day they didn't have like academies and stuff like that, and development centres and these things. It was like schools. You might have the FA School of Excellence things and counties, and that was about it. And then it was clubs. There was nothing in between. Were you quite a late bloomer in terms of, you know, Boro picking you up and things like that?
Yeah. I think so. I think in terms of age, I loved primary school. I loved the schooling at primary school. I loved everything about it. I loved the PE, but I loved also the learning. When I went to secondary school, my tides changed. You know, sometimes it didn't go, which obviously parents didn't go down very well with, and I just didn't buy into it. There was nothing, you know what I mean, and that accumulated with me leaving school with 0 qualifications, 0 GCSEs. You know what I mean? Some of them I didn't even take part in. It's something that I can give my experience to people who say that they don't try and they want to do this and they want to do that. I signed for Middlesbrough at 14. Which is quite late, you know what I mean? Because a lot of my friends and teammates at the time were signing for Middlesbrough when they were 12 and signing 3, 4, 5-year contracts at the time. And I signed a full-boy contract at the time, and I signed until I was 16. And then the club needed to make a decision if I was going to get a YTS, which would have been another 2-year deal, which once I left school, those conversations were had. And lucky enough I did. But yeah, school was probably a distraction, I'd probably say. Fun. I messed around a lot. I made a lot of friends, had a lot of good conversations, but the work got in the way because I knew what I wanted to do, and when you have those conversations with teachers and external people about what you want to do, and it was I would never say I got laughed at, but it was always but what happens when you don't do that? And I thought, well, that's not an option. You know what I mean? For me, it wasn't an option. I was that driven that. At the time, we didn't really have another option, so it was. As I say, I went to my dad's workplace and experience because Middlesbrough weren't taking players on at the time, and I was quite pleased just to sit around there, drink coffee, make coffee for everyone else, and then go back to training the week after when I was allowed.
So I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but like it sounds like in some ways, particularly back then, because things have changed a bit with academy football now. You have to do well in school or they'll drop you. Yeah. But it sounds like you had that. You were almost like that, and I was quite similar as well. Like the stereotypical boy who's good at football. Once they knew they were good at football and there was a possibility that it was a career, the kind of education side of it was you weren't really too interested in. Is that fair to say? Like you weren't just more concerned with football, like.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think it was something else in life than just doing GCSEs, and I took a risk. It was a huge risk, but it paid off at the time. And if I hadn't have made football at 16 and got to a YDS, I would have had to go to college and probably start again. And I probably wouldn't have got the course that I wanted to do, whatever I decided to do at the time. But that would have been my own fault, and I would have probably been a couple of years behind everybody else because of what I chose to do. But I chose to do something at a time when I was probably not listening to people and people telling me one thing, and I just thought I knew everything. You're young, you're naive, you're stupid, and I did things that I probably wasn't proud of looking back, because when I had to go to night school going forward, probably 15, 16 years, that I wasted a year of my life, you know what I mean, where I could have been doing something so different and quicker. So I do wish now that I had taken it a little more serious.
Yeah, it's a very weird one. Just very quickly on schools, like back in the day when me and you were like doing GCSEs and things like that, like it was like drummed into you. If you don't pass your GCSEs, if you mess this up, your life is over. Like if you don't get GCSEs, that's it. Like that's it. You've got no hope of ever achieving anything in life. But if you were good at sport, they did let you not go to, like they would let you miss school. Like I played cricket for the county. I used to just miss days off going travelling around the country to play cricket, and it didn't bother them. But then before I played cricket for the county, it was like if I bunked off a lesson, which I allegedly did quite a lot, it was a big problem, and there was a lot of hypocrisy around school. Whereas, and like they put a lot of pressure on kids. I didn't sit half of my GCSEs, and like I feel like if I'd been told at the time, because there was a reason why I didn't sit my GCSEs, I didn't just not sit them. Like my dad died, like a couple of months before I was due to do them, so I only sat like the main ones, I think. But like if I had been told, look, you can resit them and you can come back and you can still do them, I would have done that straight after, and then maybe had a different career in my early 20s and stuff, instead of knocking about in jobs in like sports shops and pubs and stuff like this. Because
but I think
the support wasn't there though, mate, back in those days, was it? Like for you, and like
I think that's really it's really familiar. You know what I mean? It reminisces with me as well. You know that you've got people who didn't go to school and they get in trouble for it. I didn't go to school and I got away with it a little bit because it was a football club. Because you know what I mean, I'd be in the paper, or you know what I mean, I'd sign my forms. So it was quite a big thing for the school to have a Middlesbrough footballer at their club at their school at the time. So it was always nice for them. Probably, so I didn't get in as much trouble. You know what I mean? Probably got in more trouble at home than, to be honest. Which I think, if it was the other way around, it would have been more of a deterrent not to do it. Yeah,
100%. And obviously, after football, you've gone on to be a school teacher, which we'll touch on a bit later. But Riverside's asked the question. He said, "Did the lack of school results impact you after football?" Do you want to touch on that very quickly, or do you want to leave that until we get to that part of the story? I'll give you the choice.
I'll answer it now because I think it's relevant. But of course I think they did, 100%. You know what I mean? But I kept my GCSE results, and I've done presentations to young children. Well, when I say young children, so year 11 children, so 15, 16 years old, to show them that a teacher can also have a bad journey, but also get there in the end by doing other things. You know that my horrific. You know what I mean? I got a lot of U's. You know what I mean? G's. I didn't pass any. You know what I mean? So I had to do things the hard way, the long way, because of the journey and the decisions I made.
So going back to the football, mate, I just wanted to touch on something. Like, when we've talked about you as a footballer over the many football shows we've done, you've been quite self-deprecating, and I think probably a bit harsh on yourself at certain times, like saying, you weren't technically very good and you were probably a bit lucky and you were just fast, and you do put yourself down a little bit. I think you were a much better footballer than you give yourself credit for. But also, I wanted to know about those early days, like when you're sort of 14, 15, and you're playing with boys who've been in that Borough side since they were 12. Like, where are you in your head and your eyes? Like, where are you compared to some of the names in that team?
Struggling, under pressure. every Saturday or Sunday, depending on which day the game was, feeling pressure that could be your last game and you could be replaced by somebody else because there's that many players who can do it, and that's the pressure that every young footballer should never have to go through. I'm not even a footballer. I'm a schoolboy. I'm a young lad just trying to enjoy with his mates, and that's all. I got to probably 15, 16. It was my last game at the Riverside. 16 before I left school, they were deciding on the YTSs, and we played Doncaster Rovers, and I came off the game. I'd scored one. I think I set a couple of goals up, 1-3-1, and I walked off the game. And if Dave, you're watching, please enjoy this bit, because if it wasn't for Dave Connery, I wouldn't have carried on playing football, because I was so disappointed and distraught after that game, because I just wanted to leave. I wanted to pack in. I just fell out of love with it. You know what I mean? And he sat down with me. He spoke to me how he would utilise my talents, how he would push forward, how he believed in me. You know what I mean? And apart from seeing parents and hearing parents, you know what I mean, football was quite a cutthroat industry. You know what I mean? Ron Bourne, who was my youth development noble, who brought me through as well. You know what I mean? That they were great, but you were only great because you were involved in the system. You know what I mean? So you know what I mean? They were amazing. They were both like dads to me within the football system. But if I wasn't in the football system, like, you know what I mean, they probably wouldn't say good words about them. But you know what I mean, if it wasn't for Dave, I think I would have packed in football at 16, and because it really got to me, and I don't know what got to me. It was just the pressure, and then probably the release of that was my last game. If I don't make it, I don't make it. There's nothing. Where do I go then? Because there's more pressure. The pressure ramped up another level after that. Another level. It goes and goes and goes. And I think that's unfair, and I think that's why there's a lot of mental health in football, because the pressure on players is more so now because of social media. Back then, it was not.
The thing is, you had at the back of your head as well, like, if this doesn't work out, I've got all U's or whatever you said it was. So it's, do you know what I mean? Like, you had that in the back of your mind, whereby at 16 years old, you're thinking, right, if this doesn't work out, I'm in a bit of trouble here. Do you see what I mean? Like, and that is so much pressure for a kid. Like, my oldest boy is now 16 doing his GCSEs. One of the things that he struggled a little bit with when he was sort of 11, 12, 13 playing for Cardiff was, like, he's a goalkeeper and he'd be playing and he would feel like you could see him working himself up before the games, because he felt like if I have a bad game today, I'm never going to be a footballer. But to me, it was never about him being a footballer. It was just him playing and being as good as he can be, and he'll play where he plays. But like, he put so much pressure on himself. And like, I played for South Wales School of Excellence from like age 15, I think, to 16, something like that. And I only played like a handful of games in my last season there before they switched to like men's football and stuff. But I was the same. Like, in training, I'd be looking at all these other boys from the different football clubs who I'd be playing against on a Saturday, and I'd be thinking, God, he's good. And I was like, I'm not as good as him. Yet the first 3 games of that season, we played away at Wolves against their academy, and I was picked to start. But I put so much pressure on myself because I didn't think I was as good as those players, and I didn't have a coach like what you had saying, well, this is why you're playing. And now, look, as an adult, I can look back and I can think, yeah, I was pretty good, and I can see why they played me. And they played because I played alongside, I think, Jermaine Easter for a couple of games. So like, I could see why they would have played me with him, because I was quite quick and quite skillful and quite small, and he, even at that age, like, he was a unit. Like, he's a big boy, strong, able to hold the ball up and all this, you know, all the usual stuff. Like, but it's a lot of pressure, and at 14, 15, I wasn't equipped to deal with it. So I had other issues, and I discovered girls and smoking and drinking and stuff, which that does not mix if you want to play academy or elite level sports. How did you stay away from girls and drinking as a teenager? Because, you know, you're from a working class area. I'd imagine that all your friends were doing it. Like, how do you put that down to your parents' influence, your brother's influence? Did you do it and just get away with it?
No, I didn't touch a drop until I was 18. Until I turned 18 on my 18th birthday.
That's so unusual, mate. That isn't it?
I put that down to mum and dad, and to my brother. My brother was different. My brother, I know, drank at a very, and continues to this day. Bless him. But listen, it's everyone to their own, you know. But I started at 18 and got myself in a lot of trouble with it, which I'll talk about later on. But it is different. I stopped playing at 16 as well. So obviously I left school at 16. I ended up getting an opportunity to play for the first team at 16. So I think that gave me the hunger and the desire that I didn't need to go on a lad's holiday in the summer because I just made my Premier League debut. You know what I mean? So I was in a very good place. That was my do because Brian Robson's told me that I can't do it. You know what I mean? He didn't tell me that, but that was always in the back of my mind that if anyone did ask me, I've always got that get out clause that I've just made my Premier League debut. I'm not risking what I could have next season, and then the following season I can say the same thing. I think when you get to 18 and you're allowed to do certain things, it's more difficult, and when you get the taste of it, it's hard to turn it away as well. You know what I mean? So once you sample something, you know what I mean, if that's drugs, if that's drink, if that's gambling, if that's caffeine, whatever it may be, addictions left, right and centre, and it's hard to get away from things.
Oh, 100%, mate. And particularly if you get into those things at a young age, it is incredibly different. A couple of episodes I had rapper T-Rev on this series, My Story. He's from Swansea, and like he got involved in drink and drugs at a really young age, like sort of 11, 12, like that. To me, that's extremely young. But it was the area he was from. It was he had like some issues at home and stuff like that. And it's only now, where he's coming up to 30, that he's getting a handle on all that stuff. Because once you start doing that sort of stuff at like that young age, it's this, you know, what chance you got? Like, because you haven't even reached
that's hard.
Like, proper
it's really,
maturity of you.
Yeah, it's really difficult, and you know what I mean.
It sounds like you made some good decisions, though, mate.
At a young age, I made some amazing decisions. I just didn't keep them up, and I didn't continue them. And then when I did make the bad decisions, too often, probably to get away with it.
But then when you started to go out drinking and stuff, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. But like when you were going on like holidays and drinking and things like that, like you were old enough to be able to deal with it and to know that I got a game tomorrow, so I can't go on the piss, or I can't do this and I can't do that. Whereas as a teenager, if you get into going to parties age 15, 16 and you're drinking and you're smoking or there's other people smoking, it's very difficult to get yourself out of that, because then you hit 18 and you can go to pubs and you're going out every weekend, and then that's why I feel that managers do so much. Like you look at what Ferguson did with Giggs and Beckham, and Neville and all them. He tried so hard when they were 16, 17 to protect them and to not let them fall into those habits. As your brother, like obviously your brother's older than you, and has he ever had to, when you were a kid, maybe like not a kid but like a teenager, 17, 18, whatever, did he ever have to kind of sit you down and say, mate, come on, get your head down and do this? Or were you
probably not 17, 18, but he's probably done it. He's had to do it later on. You know, screwed on. I think it's because I got that opportunity really early, and I think that's what made me just make those kind of decisions that I knew I just couldn't do it, and it was. But those decisions became harder every week. You know what I mean? Every week towards when you're getting a little bit older, every Saturday. They become harder, and then once you give in, there was no going back then, I don't think.
Yeah, of course. Right, so you signed for Boro 16. How long was it before you were training with the first team?
I made reserves probably about a month or two into the season, which was amazing. I mean, 16 years old, just left school. I'm playing with some young players, Mark Somerville, Chris Freestone, etc. I'm playing with some experienced players, some players who I watched on the terraces, which is just a surreal. I'm training with Gordon McQueen, Viv Anderson's joining in, obviously the Gaffer's joining in, Brian Robson, and then all of a sudden Brian, the Gaffer and Viv and Gordon did things quite differently. You know what I mean? They always got a young player to to do jobs around the first shortly, but you'd also be there to do jobs. So young players would go to games, young players would do certain things, and I think that's in my head. That's why I thought I was there for half the time. But you know what I mean, and probably I am being a little bit disrespectful to myself. But reserves, I thought I did really well. You know what I mean, my pace frightened opposition. I was raw. Which I think really helps. You know, I mean, people didn't really know a lot about me, so I could give that a little bit extra. I played in some amazing stadiums, Riverside, obviously in the reserves. I played at Barnsley at Orkwell, and it just gave me a buzz and a taste of I'm playing here in empty stadiums on a night, playing in the Pontins League. I want to play here with a stadium. I want to play here in a proper game, which means something. And I just want to do it. It wasn't about that. It was just about getting that buzz and scoring a goal and just playing at these kind of stadiums because I just loved it. You know what I mean? Because I was playing in the reserves one Wednesday and then 3 days later I'm going back to playing on a field for the youth team, and it was difficult to bring yourself down to that level again and then having to step back up and down. So it was nice to be a regular reserve player over the years and get yourself in the first team and try and get a foot in there and just climb that ladder as quick as that possibly could, really.
Just going back quickly to the drinking and stuff. Donna asked, have you ever smoked a cigarette?
No, never. I've never smoked a cigarette. I've smoked 2 cigars in my life. One for my eldest when she was born, and one for my second one when she was born. And I didn't smoke because that was just a family thing. What we did, or I think we did with the lads at the time. So never ever in my life, no.
I know 2 people in like in real life who have never even tried smoking like a cigarette.
I wouldn't even know.
I wish that if I could change one thing about my life, mate, that would be that I would go back to when I was 15 and I would never start smoking.
I wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, but I'd be devastated if any of my kids smoke now because they know how much it gets to me that I like smoke so much, and it's a difficult one to kick, shall we say? So you made your debut for Middlesbrough, aged. It's your story, mate. You got to tell it.
16 years old, just about.
Just a boy.
2.5 weeks before my 17th birthday. Good Friday. Live on Sky against Sheffield Wednesday, and listen, Alex, a good friend of mine. We set the kit up on the afternoon. I did loads of jobs for him, helped him out. Went upstairs to do a pre-match meal. The gaffer named his team. He named his subs, and he named me on the bench. And I was a little bit like, just sat there thinking. He's just said John Pickering, who's sadly not with us. John was a good friend of mine. John was the first team coach at Middlesbrough. And John was sat next to me, put his hand on my shoulder, and just said, "This is your chance, and I guarantee you'll get on today. Your family know you're on the bench, so nothing to worry about. Just go and enjoy." I was gobsmacked. I couldn't believe it. And warming up, seeing the full house, Sky cameras being there, playing against Sheffield Wednesday, who had some really good stars, by the way. That's a really good side. And the way the game went, Chris Freestone made his debut and scored. And obviously me and Chris had a really good relationship with Middlesbrough. I came on about the... I loved it. I had a great game as well. I didn't give the ball away. Made some good runs, and I didn't want the game to end. And I remember the game finished, and straight when the game finished, I'm picking kit up in the changing room and cleaning boots. And by the time all that had been clean, my mum and dad were waiting me to go home, and it just felt like a really good dream, and that I was going to wake up. And thankfully it wasn't, and thankfully I didn't, because obviously 2 weeks later, or the next day, 2 weeks later, the same thing happened. But obviously we played at Liverpool away, Anfield. It was Ian Rush's last, so it was a big one. The manager put me in the side, named me in the starting 11. He didn't tell the kitman, which is him all over. So the kitman didn't have a shirt for me. So the manager had to go trawling this top blue away kit for me to wear. He brought it back. He had to ring the Premier League to get a special dispensation for me to wear it, which I've still got to this day, and managed to get that at about 10-3. So I made my debut at Anfield, stood in the guard of honour for Ian Rush. What on earth's going on? This is ridiculous. 16 years old, stood on Anfield. You know what I mean? Watching all these world superstars ready to play their game. Neil Ruddock marked me. I think I was on the pitch for about 71 minutes, and he did everything to me, kicked me, did everything to me. And I grew up from a boy to a man that afternoon, and I realised what it takes to be a footballer, because I always thought after that game and coming back and speaking to my mum and dad that whatever happens on the football pitch, nothing ever will be as worse as that. Nothing ever will be bad. But
No.
after the game, he said to me that that was one of the hardest games that he's had. You know what I mean? I ran him all over. He had a really tough afternoon, and I'm hoping he wasn't just saying that just to get my confidence up, but it was a nice thing to hear. And that was just a start. It was my own little drug. It was, you know what I mean? I've never taken drugs in my life, but that was my own drug. I wanted more of it, and I wanted more of it straight away.
And the thing is, I think, like, at that time, making a debut at 16, like a first team debut, was pretty rare. Like, it was normally around 17, 18. That was quite young. I know, like, you, Michael Owen, they're the first ones where I think back, and I think there was like 16, and I know since then there's been a couple of 15-year-olds, but like, to me it's madness. Like, but also it is mad that a child is playing like Premier League football, don't get me wrong, but equally I think it shows that how highly Brian Robson thought of you. And I know in the end you ended up leaving Middlesbrough, which is kind of next on the horizon for us to talk about, but just talk about the influence that Brian Robson had in that first sort of period of your football career, and basically you becoming a man, like, because you, even though you were 16, you had to become a man because you were playing men's football for your job.
Oh, listen, Brian's a hero of mine, not for the reasons that people think. Brian was like a dad to me at football. I was going through a tough time in my personal life at the time. My mum and dad had just split up and were getting divorced, a lot with me. The manager helped me out. The manager put his arm around me and gave me a kick up the backside when I needed it, but he was just perfect to me. You know, I made some really bad choices at Middlesbrough with drink and things, and he gave me the advice and told me what I was doing was the wrong things, and he wasn't that nice about it, by the way. But
he's been there, though, hasn't he? In that,
he was perfect for me, because he knew exactly what I needed to do to get round it, and it was only the day that he was absolutely heartbroken. I'll be honest. You know what I mean? Emotion that day was it. I'd spat my dummy right out and just said, listen, I can't stay here anymore. You know what I mean? I went to see the chief exec straight away, Keith Lamb, and just I've just lost something. I've just lost something now at the club. We can stay here anymore. He told me to go home, come back tomorrow, and see if I felt the same way. And if I felt the same way, he would allow me to leave, because obviously the new manager had already been brought in to take over, and I came in the next day, said I felt exactly the same way as I did yesterday, and he said he would grant me a transfer as long as the deal was right for the football club, and I was happy to go.
What about in terms of, like, as a young man, like 16 to 18, how did you deal with like media in terms of, you know, when they rate players and they talk about your performance? Like, we had Clark Carlisle up this past Monday, and he talked about how he got really upset when he got a 4 out of 10 for the playoff final, and things like that. You know, some players it maybe doesn't bother as much as others. Some players don't look at it. Like, where did you stand in that? Did you pay no attention? Did you ever fall out with any journalists across your career because of things like that?
Between 16 and 18, I was really lucky. The good things were getting said about me because I'd already made my debut, so I was on the crest of a wave, and people were saying good things about me all the time, and it was very rare that anybody did say anything bad. And if I did have a bad game or a bad moment or make a bad choice, it would always be remembered what I'd done. So I was quite lucky at that time. I think it probably hurt me a little bit, and I started to probably take notice of probably when I left Middlesbrough that I'm now in an area, in a club, in a country where I'm not one of their sons anymore. You know what I mean? Where I'm a local lad. You get protected a little bit. You know what I mean? The media seem to protect you. The club protected you. The fans protected you. You're a hero. You go to a club, and all of a sudden you've got to reinvent yourself again. You've got to start from scratch and start over. Yeah,
100%, mate. With, you know, So obviously Brian Robson had a massive influence on you as a person. What about maybe players, senior players above you?
Listen, I've had loads of Kavanagh, Robbie Mustoe, Nigel Pearson, Jan Lagerfjord, Mikkel Beck, Chris Freestone. At Middlesbrough, they helped me no end. You know what I mean? They helped me all the time, and really, really, I grew up really quickly, and I knew that they were there if I ever needed to speak my advice and to leave. You know, I had an opportunity to go and sign for Aberdeen. It didn't feel right for me. A fee had got agreed. I went there to have a look around. It still didn't feel right. Came back, spoke to a couple of players, and they said to me, "Listen, if it doesn't feel right, don't go." I said, "Something else will come up." You know what I mean? You know what I mean? There's clubs want you. You know what I mean? And said something will come up. And luckily enough, Cardiff City was around the corner, so Cardiff City happened. And but that obviously wasn't before. People might not know this. You know what I mean? Things that obviously I failed a medical at Crystal Palace a year and a half before. Brian Robson was manager. Brian was good best friends with Steve Bruce. Steve Bruce was manager at Crystal Palace, and Brian said that he thinks it would be a good move for me if I went to Crystal Palace and signed for Steve. We were in the Premier League at the time, and because he said it, I was happy to go there. Agreed terms, agreed everything, but failed my medical on a long-standing ankle injury, which I needed an operation straight away to sort it out, which obviously came out of the blue, which nobody knew. And then obviously went back to Middlesbrough, did that, and then got me left. And Lenny got in touch and signed for Cardiff City. But you talk about people, say, who had an influence on my career. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people, but the two managers who I'm going to talk about, Brian Robson had influence, like I said, but Lenny, Lawrence, I can't thank enough. You know what I mean? Many years, you know what I mean, to the phone calls he gave me to try and entice me out of Middlesbrough, which I didn't need a lot, by the way. To the effort he made when I came, you know what I mean, for his family to look after me when they did, for him to be as friendly as he was, you know, beyond. And people think, well, it's a manager's job. It's not a manager's job at all. It's a club's job, but it's not a manager's job. You know, I'm a manager's there to manage the team. You know what I mean? He went above and beyond with me, and I'll never forget that. And there's moments, you know, look at the playoff line, look at the moments, and those moments he made me the person at Cardiff City and made me settle in really quickly, and I couldn't thank him enough.
Yeah, I think, like, what was that like in terms of Middlesbrough is your team, not only your hometown club, but it's the team you support as a boy. It's the only thing you know, like, and you know that if you go to Aberdeen, you go to Palace, you go to Cardiff, it doesn't matter where you went, all those clubs are not in Middlesbrough, are they? So, like,
yeah.
What was that like for a young man to be thinking to move away from his family for the first time? In terms of a decision, yes, but also in practice of doing it as well.
Yeah, it was probably easier doing it than it was thinking about it. You know what I mean? When I thought about it too hard, it was always a no. But when I went and did the move, it wasn't as hard as what I thought. You know what I mean? I was dreading it. I was worried about it. I was worried about driving there. Where is it? How do I get there? What happens if I get lost? When I get there, where do I go? Who do I talk to? Who do I know? Where's the hotel? It was loads of things. You know what I mean? I remember my first couple of days in the hotel, just to settle me in before obviously Sam and Lenny came, and I would eat in the hotel on my own. I'd go down to the restaurant every day, and I'd sit there on my own, and I'd see families eating or businessmen eating in King 4s and 5s and 6s. Sat there on my own, and I think on the second and third day I brought a newspaper down with me because I thought, listen, this is just uncomfortable. I'm sat there eating my dinner, looking at people. I just brought a newspaper, plugged it down my table, and just read it while I ate. And I remember the manager coming up to me and just said, listen, you can't, it's not appropriate. And I just thought, well, do you know what? I'm not coming down because I just felt really uncomfortable. And I think it was after 4 or 5 days, I went to go and see Jason Turner at the club. It was a club secretary at the time, and just said, listen, Jason, is there a chance that I can go somewhere else or live with? I'm just not enjoying the hotel life. The room's fine, the everything's fine apart from the dinners, you know what I mean? And what I don't want to do is go into town and eat in restaurants on my own, because I've been the same thing, you know what I mean? And I wanted to do it right. I still wanted to prepare right, so it was got me a flat in the bay sorted, and it made things a lot easier for me and made me settle in really quickly, and that was pushed on by the manager. So I really can't thank the club enough for that, really.
Did you know any City players before you came down?
Obviously knew Cav racing. I knew Des Hamilton. I knew a couple of others. I remember my first day's training. We trained in the Vale of Glamorgan, and we trained in the dome thing, right down the bottom where the golf course was starting to be. That was awful. I had the worst training session ever. We did a shooting drill, and I remember Reece Weston was just howling at some of my shots, and he was like, "Is that ink dried yet in his contract?" And I was just thinking, Jesus, like I just didn't want to be there. I just wanted to just get swallowed up. But it was a case of that. And a lot of the lads had been given the day off because they played on the Wednesday or the Tuesday, so they were coming back in on the Friday before my first game at Northampton. And listen, football's banter, you know. You've got to take it, and it was just one of those things. But it's
part of welcoming you to the side as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah. First day it's probably not the best practice.
No,
I'll be honest.
So obviously we the show I did with Cav and the show that we did with Cav, he mentioned the sort of sheep's testicles with Sam Aman when he signed. And what was your first impression of Sam Aman, very quickly?
Sam was amazing for me. You know, listen, there was no stories as in what he made me do and what he made me eat. He was very positive very loud, very positive. He was everywhere where I went. He make sure I was okay. But no, he was a gentleman, loud gentleman, but he was a gentleman, and I can't thank him enough of the way that he pushed our football club in a direction when I was there. He was great to have around, and I think he's got to take huge credit to be because of him.
Riverside just asked, was Sam Aman still there when that goal was scored for Cardiff?
Yeah, Sam was. He wasn't walking around the ground.
He began
after the game. Yeah, I've got a lot of photos of me and Sam after the game, with me, Sam, and Lenny, and me and Sam. Sam came in my press conference after the game. I was still in my kit, and obviously people wanted to talk about the goal, and I remember sat in the press conference, and Sam just sat there thinking, "You've just got us promoted," and he'd just pop up with the odd comment, not answering anything, just come up just saying, "What a goal." What a goal! Like, he just couldn't. He was just amazing, and it probably made me feel a little bit more comfortable because I didn't prepare. I hadn't prepared for to be dragged out of the changing room, stuck in front of 500 reporters, cameras. You know what I mean, for that 10-15 minute spell, and I wanted to go as far away as I could in the changing room and start partying with the rest of the lads.
100%, mate. So. Obviously, it's very difficult to cover your whole sort of life and career in an hour, so I'm going to throw some questions at you now, mate, to sort of round, just some general questions, really. What was the worst period of your football career?
Being injured, I think. I had a couple of really serious ones. I was injured for 12-13 months at Middlesbrough. I had 6 or 7 months at Halifax twice, and probably all 3 times I drank myself into oblivion. I was lonely at the time. I was selfish. I was out of order, and it was just a really tough time because I knew how serious the injuries were, and I didn't really know how to handle it because. When you're a footballer, you go in, you do your training, you go home, and you have a routine. And I didn't really know how to handle the routine because I'd go in, I'd lay on a treatment bed for 2-3 hours at a time, and then he'd tell me to go home, and I'm thinking, well, I didn't know how to handle it, so I handled it in a really bad way, and just got all my decisions wrong, but I had a knock-on effect, you know what I mean? I was in such a good routine of not being able to do things before the game, where now I can go out on a Tuesday, I can go out on a Thursday, I can go out on a Friday before the game, I can go out on a Saturday straight after the game, I can go out on a Sunday, it doesn't matter. So there I'm more or less covered the whole week, you know what I mean, without thinking about it, and that's the scary thought of it, you know what I mean? That was, and then all of a sudden you get a little bit of a reputation for doing it, and then it's trying to change the tide of it, you know what I mean? So. Yeah. All of a sudden, you've got to be able to come back training. You're starting to do jogging. You're starting to do little bits of training, little bits of exercise. Well, I changed my whole lifestyle again because I went from, again, being a professional athlete again overnight, and that was difficult as well because I'd probably gone above and beyond and gone too far.
Also, so that would be like your least favourite sort of period. We talk about Dave Jones almost on a weekly basis sometimes. You fell out with Dave. But did you ever have fallout with any teammates, whether it be during a game or after a game, or was there anyone over your career, if you don't want to name them specifically, but you could tell the situation, or anyone you fell out with?
There's always arguments on a game, but for me, it was always what happens in the changing room stays in the changing room, and it was it happened weekly, gamely, if not daily. You know what I mean? There'd be fights on the training ground, which you're involved in remotely or directly. And it's really it's a case of that you want to win, you know what I mean, and it brings togetherness, you know what I mean. The bad times sometimes can bring the best out of a bad situation for a group of players, for individuals, and yes, it was a difficult time with Dave, and it wasn't handled in the right way by him. I thought he was out of order. I'm not going to lie, you know, in my opinion, he was out of order, but I was so stubborn, it was scary. So you know what I mean, if he hadn't been as out of order and I wouldn't then be as stubborn as I was, it could have been handled a little bit better. We could have shook hands, there would have been less fallout, and then certain other things might not have happened as well.
Yeah, do you think if there was someone, maybe someone around at that time, like a Lenny Lawrence or Brian Robson, just someone who you spoke to on a regular basis with a bit of experience, they might have been able to maybe talk you into dealing with it a different way, and maybe there would have been a different, not necessarily a different outcome, but a different feeling coming out of Cardiff? Because obviously Cardiff, from you made your most appearances for any club for Cardiff City. You achieved getting Cardiff City to the playoffs. You scored this famous goal, but also like that journey for Cardiff getting to the Championship was a long one. We failed. Yeah. I think it was like the 3 seasons before that at the very last hurdle, whether it was missing the playoffs on the last day or losing the playoff semi-finals over 2 legs on away goals or a deflected goal. Like, it was a long journey, and I think that's what made that day so special, was that it wasn't just the goal and winning 1-0 and it being in Cardiff. It was the journey of failing before that. It was almost like the relief finally doing it.
Listen, I think it was just, he wanted me out of the football. He was given a remit to get me out at all costs, and he decided to go down a certain way instead of just saying, listen, you know what I mean, what's your thoughts if you're not going to play? If the conversation was handled in a different manner, you know what I mean, and telling somebody that your face doesn't fit here, you're not wanted, the fans don't, your teammates don't like you, you're not allowed around the place, those kind of things were said to me, you know what I mean. So when those kind of things are said to you, well, I said, well, I disagree, you know what I mean, because I just came in with 2 lads who you just named, you know what I mean, who I share a car with, you know what I mean. He said, well, you're not training with them again. I said, I live next door to them. The whole thing didn't add up, and then you start to think to yourself, who can I trust in this place?
Yeah. That's hard then, isn't it?
You know what I mean? And so I'm starting to then doubt, you know what I mean? So I was a member at the Vale myself, you know what I mean? So I go for a swim now and again, and I was training there one day because I went in the club, not allowed to train, and the lads turned up in a warm down, and the manager and his coaching staff turned around to me and told me that I wasn't allowed to speak to anybody from the club, and I just thought, listen, this is it, you know what I mean? This has got so serious now that I've got to leave, and someone's got to give it, and he gives in. So the next day, I went in with it ultimatum, and he wasn't giving in. And then again, you know what I mean. So the fuel on the fire just kept igniting all the time, and it was such a shame because I love that football club, and I still do. And you know, but one person's opinion who wanted something different at the time, and I just wish it was handled differently. And if he wants to come and apologise to me, I'll forget about it, but it won't happen.
Well, it's funny, mate. I tease Kev about Malky because Malky didn't fancy him and he wanted him to go, and I kind of tease him about that, and the way Solskjaer treated Kev was abhorrent. But like, there's a way of doing it. Like, everyone understands, even us as fans, we understand that when a new manager comes in, or when there's a manager, he's got to make a decision. If he doesn't fancy you as a player, that's fine, but just say, look, you're not going to play. I think you should move on. And if you say, no, I want to fight for my place, then that's up to them then to either say, right, okay, but you got to understand you're not going to play, or them saying a bit more forcefully, look, I think for the good of the club and the good of you should probably go, but not try this like psychological approach where it's messing with your head, upsetting your personal life, and it's very
it doesn't have to be
unprofessional
personal
for me.
well.
Like,
It doesn't have to be
of course it
personal,
doesn't.
and that was the thing for me. It got too personal. You know what I mean? So for me, if you kept it, just in within the club, and we had a conversation, and we could have done it, and then instead of going home angry about it and ringing my agent and ringing the PFA, so I'd all of a sudden got 3 or 4 people involved who were telling me these things to go in tomorrow and fueling the fire straight away. So already I was going in tomorrow in a bad frame of mind and throwing things at him which he didn't like, and then all of a sudden it's you know what I mean. Whereas it could have been done so different, it wasn't, and you get on with it. It's football. Listen, it's a club which I do wish that I was able to finish my journey of finishing off in a way, or be able to give something back to supporters and do it on my terms and not his terms. But it wasn't to be.
Exactly that, mate. So Donna just said we should get Dave Jones on the Monday show. All I can say is I've tried everything I can. There's nothing, and I'm sure you can attest to that. There's nothing more I can do in terms of.
No, listen. You know what I mean? Yeah, we've all tried. We want to do things, but it's one of those things, and my fault in a way that how I reacted, and I put a tweet out when Dave got a job at Hartlepool United. Bad timing, probably on everyone's part. Told him what I thought of him, and it went viral over. Well, the minute I pressed send, basically, and
gone.
Players, managers, clubs, supporters, papers, everybody was ringing me up within a minute of it landing. So I knew straight away that maybe whoops, I probably shouldn't have sent that, but you live and learn.
So, with regards to the aftermath of Andy's football career, we're not going to discuss that tonight. However, if you want to hear Andy talk about that, I've just dropped the mental health in sport episode featuring myself and Andy, which is where that was predominantly about. It was like the end of your career and the aftermath of that. So people want to do that part of it, they can discuss. There's 2 subjects which I would like to talk about to wrap us up, mate. And you know, look, I'll be honest, mate. I could do this. This could be a 2-hour episode, or we could go literally bit by bit, club by club. It's difficult, but the idea is that it's a short, sharp hour. So first and foremost, you made 4 appearances for England under 21s. Of course, you had some very famous teammates. Talk to me about that in terms of the importance to you personally for representing your country at such a high level, but also is there any regrets that maybe you didn't get that full cap as well?
I made my debut at the Riverside Middlesbrough Football Club, and I always thought that I was only in that group to get the fans into the stadium that day, which I don't know the answers to those questions. You know what I mean? I was playing sometimes in the Premier League. I wasn't a star, and you know what I mean. There was bums on seats because there was a Middlesbrough football player in that squad. So maybe I am giving myself a little bit of a disservice. However, the second, third, and fourth time, which my cap's for, the second one was the Yugoslavia game in Skin Week out in the Premier League. I just scored on the Saturday against Sheffield Wednesday, and I played in the World Cup, in the European Championship qualifier against Yugoslavia in Barcelona, which we won 3-0, and the famous photo of Lampard, Kieran Dyer, Emil Heskey, Richard Wright, Jamie Carragher, Seth Johnson, anybody else I've missed out? Me. You know, and I deserved to be on that pitch. Didn't deserve to be in the squad, I deserved to be on that pitch because the way I was playing, I wanted to give myself an opportunity to play well, got myself a goal. We won the game, played really well, and all I wanted was to be in the squad for Slovakia for the European Championships. That's all I wanted. Didn't care about anything else, and thankfully I've got that opportunity. I didn't play we massively underachieved. As Adrian Beverton spoke on our previous show, we massively underachieved. For the players we had, Premier League footballers, we massively underachieved. But do I regret not getting a full cap? because it was out of my hands. The squad was picked by Kevin Keegan and other managers. Yes, I was disappointed that some other people got caps, and it was like that they were given caps, and you know what I mean. Would they have liked one? Maybe that I probably not wanted one and just got the one. You only got one. You know what I mean? For me, it's probably not about the one. It's about the 2, 3, and 4. You know what I mean? If you do it 2, 3, and 4 times, you deserve them. You know what I mean? The one, is it just a meaningless friendly? Is it just because they wanted to have a look at you and how you fitted in? You know what I mean? You can do that in training. You don't need to have a cap for that sort of the England caps I've got. Nobody can ever take them away from me. I deserved at least 3 of them, if not all of them. So the 3 I definitely deserved. My debut, I'm not so sure. But if my remit was just to get bums on seats, then I did my job, and I did that as well. And I played well. I was quite pleased, and I got to play for my country. So it didn't get any better than that.
Absolutely, mate. Any regrets from your career overall? Anything you would change?
No. Not football career. No, not one. No, not one whatsoever. On a personal level. You know what I mean? It's hard, Silas, and I'm not going to sit here and say, you know what I mean, football's easy. Football is one of the most difficult things. It's mentally, it's physically demanding. You know what I mean? The rates about divorces within footballers, because the amount of time that you focus on football, and it's hard to dictate about family life and trying to differentiate about that. You know what I mean? I'll be honest, I struggled to focus family when I was so driven on the football, and I was away and I was moving clubs, and it was about me, not nobody else, you know. And that was difficult. That was really hard, and I probably only realised how hard it is when I packed in that then maybe is what you should have been doing. But then would the football have struggled? You know what I mean? So it's getting that fine balance and having that support mechanism around you.
Spot on, mate. And the last thing I wanted to discuss is podcasting. So you do a show with me Monday, Friday, and I don't necessarily want to talk about the podcast specifically in terms of, you know, the guests and this. What I wanted to get your opinion on, and I'm not going to say anything about it, I'm not going to say very much about it, I just want to hear you, is the start, what you wanted it to be when I first approached you and stuff like that. What were your aims then? How have those aims changed? And how has it, if it has at all, impacted or helped you or done anything? Like just the impact, I guess, of it as a whole on you as a person, on your life, if it has anything at all. And just talk about that side of it. So not necessarily specifically about the podcast, but more about it generally, aims, etc.
When you approached me to do a show as a guest, I thought that was it. I thought that was as going to be. It was just do a show, and that was it. And it was probably only when you asked me to do it again, I thought about it, and I thought the pros and cons. I thought, listen, it's something that I've got a passion in, football. I had the time to do it that suited me. Because I think that's important, that things have to be built around other things now, and I what I've just spoke about there about being selfish and being driven, I think it had to be built around lifestyles and other things. It took off. I think and probably the moment I knew it took off is when we went live. I'll be honest. The other shows were amazing. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't that kind of interaction. What it is now, when we're having those interactions, we're having banter, we're having the disagreements, and we're able to bounce off other people. I think just makes it so much better, so much fun. The enjoyment levels there, and you know what I mean. And it's amazing. You know what I mean? And listen, COVID's been a nightmare for everybody. People lost their lives, and it's been the worst time ever. For me personally, been amazing for my confidence levels, because I've done more podcasts, I've been able to speak to live guests, I've been able to speak to heroes, I've been able to speak to teammates, opposition players who are playing against. So that's a plus that I've taken from it. I've been able to do other ones for other people and compare, which I think is important as well, that that what can we improve? We've had numerous conversations about improving, going to next levels. How do we do it? Is there a progression? And for me, the progression, I wouldn't say it's TV. I think the progression, for me, the progression of a podcast has got to be the kind of radio. You know what I mean? Because it's that kind of thing. Yes, you're on the screen, but it's like you haven't got a big TV camera in your face, and I think sometimes that can put you in a different situation and feel a lot under pressure. You know what I mean? When you're looking at a computer, which is a norm. When you're looking at a device, which is a norm. You're looking at your phone, which is just normal. When people have done these Zoom calls and people have done these Skype calls, you look at yourself for ages, because I'm doing this podcast now. I'm sat looking at myself because I want to make sure that I'm looking in the right position. So whoever I'm with, if it's Clark Carlisle last Monday on my own, if it's Willie Boland, I mean, I'll be making sure that I'm handling myself right and I'm in the right position and I'm doing it right. So I'm looking at myself. I don't really look at the other person, because I think it's important that I'm in the right position of my screen and stuff, and it's all working out. So, you know, I've loved it, Si. It's perfect timing, and I hope things can progress on to the next level, whatever that level is. If that's a bigger platform, I would love that opportunity. And I don't mean that as in make sure, and I've said this all along, the show works because we work well together. We don't get on all of the time. Sorry, I'll start that again. We don't get on in topics all of the time. You know what I mean? We get on off the show because we're friends and we get on really well. And I think we just sit there and we just say about the same thing. You know what I mean? If that's Cardiff City and I think they've played well, you don't think they have. They've made a good signing, no, they haven't. You know what I mean? And I'll use the example for the viewers of that young girl who signed for Millwall or Charlton and was. Listen, that was one of my favourite shows of all time for me and you, because I probably could have still been on it today. That we were. You had one opinion, I had another. My opinion, in my eyes, was right. Your opinion, in your eyes, was right. If we had the same question again tomorrow, and so would you, and that's what makes it. You know what I mean? We don't do it, and we didn't ring each other up and say, right, you need to say this and I need to say that, because things are so fake, they don't work. You know, it's got to be natural, and I think we come across really natural. I think the chemistry is there. To want to come on, people are now approaching us to come on, and I think that's key. You know, I mean, the guests that we've had have made the show. I'll be honest, you know, I mean, they've made it, and they've been amazing. We've been so lucky and so fortunate to have some outrageous guests with some stories to tell. Well, guess by the way, there's some guests who keep on getting really good jobs after they leave, after they finish our shows. So maybe you should start signing contracts about plugs, or maybe some kind of fee for ourselves.
Take a percentage of future earnings, mate.
Yeah, listen, I say this to people when I'm wanting to come on, that do you want to raise your profile? You know what I mean? Do you want to tell your story? Where do you want to go? Do you want to be a manager? Do you want to be assistant manager? Do you want to get back into football? Do you want to tell the world that you've got no club? Come on and tell your story. Just be visible. And if that helps anybody, then so be it. You know what I mean? We're helping somebody out as well as helping ourselves, because the show's working. The show's a success. People are loving it, and long may it continue. By the way.
100%, mate. And I think the only thing I'd say in regards to, you know, bigger platform and stuff like that, we just wanted to grow. And like personally, like for me, I'd happily keep it on YouTube and Facebook and Ace Podcast Nation. But what it's got to be is it's got to be in, like, at some point it's got to start paying money from my point of view, just because of the amount of time and effort and everything which goes into everything. So like, we'll always listen to anyone, but for me, if we could get, like, or say for me personally, I do 4 shows a week in total. If I could get sponsors which pay decently for those 4 shows every week, then I'm happy to keep it on Ace Podcast Nation and keep growing it that way, and eventually get 500,000 views or 30,000 views, whatever, every episode. That's fine, because then we're in control of it. We can keep regular interaction with all the regular viewers, etc., etc. But one thing we have always said, to round it off, is that we will listen to anyone who wants to get involved, wants to speak to us about their platform, and there's been a couple recently, wasn't what's the word without being rude, wasn't like
appropriate.
Yeah, someone
for us.
I'll tell a very, very, very quick story. Someone offered me a slot on a radio show for this series, the My Story series, but they wanted me to send them my content, which I had edited and produced and recorded, and then they wanted me to pay for a slot on their radio station to get it. It's not a digital radio station, just an online radio station, but I have more Facebook followers, or Ace Podcast Nation has more Facebook followers than what they do. So I was shocked. Yeah, it's weird, but there we go. It is what it is. People, and I listened and I was interested. But yeah, Andy Campbell, thank you for joining me, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Donna, sorry, mate, just very quickly, Donna. The reason it's not normally live is because I record the MMA and boxing show on a Sunday night, and also I find that a lot of guests don't always want to do like a Sunday show, but it is something I'm going to look into about doing it on a Sunday live, and then maybe I'll do the MMA and boxing one live on a Wednesday then with Danny. It all comes down to logistics and stuff, but I wanted to give something back to you guys because I was really touched by the amount of people who reached out to me over the last 10 days, which was a killer, by the way, not doing any podcasts. That was like the longest 10 days of in a very long time. But anyway, guys, I appreciate all of you watching, getting involved. Please check out the previous episodes of My Story. There's the first 9 episodes of this series, plus series 1 featured Reese Weston, Scott Young, plus loads of other people, Adam Hollyoak, Lofty from EastEnders. Who else have we had? We had Shed Sevens, lead singer, on last week, or the last episode. It's always a good time telling people's story, but we'll be back tomorrow, myself and Andy, with the one and only Willie Boland. Spread the word, tell your friends, keep it Ace Podcast Nation, follow at A.C.E Footy Show for the football stuff, and we'll see you tomorrow night live at 7:30, and I'll make sure I play the right clip to finish the show instead of the old one which I played at the start. Cheers, guys. Cheers, Andy.
Cheers, guys. Thanks, mate.
Famous, so famous, number one, desirable. I do what I want, when I want, and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air, that's how I roll. I got tons of soul, I'm a true collectible. Famous, so famous, number one, desirable. I do what I want, when I want, and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air, that's how I roll. I got things to throw, I don't care about no gold. Better, so much better, flipping, incredible. Always on the show, so they know that I still got it. And I never feel sorry, yeah, top of the world. Top of the world, yeah, top of the world, top of the world, yeah, top of the world, top of the world, yeah, top of the world, top of the world, yeah, top of the world. When I hear him come like my fuse and then ba-bum. Later, see you later, I'm about to blow this